Welcome back. We're in conversation with ANC President Mr. Jacob Zuma following the conclusion of the four-day policy conference that the governing party held in Johannesburg this past week. Mr. President, now the question then is really the promise of change, of urgency, of doing things differently. Where are you going to begin as a party?
Well, there are matters that we'll be able to deal with, which have already resolutions, even before the Mangaung conference. What is going to happen now after the policy conference? Policy conference itself empowers the organization on those matters that we have resolutions. There are others that will be recommendations that will be finalized in December. And thereafter, immediately after December, there's going to be absolutely visible change in the manner in which we are going to deal with matters, both in the party as well as in government. In fact, between now and December, we'll be making preparations on some of the specific issues, ready to say if they are finalized, we are ready to act immediately.
Okay. Between now and, say, December, what is the ANC going to do differently that's going to guarantee the immediate and visible results that you're talking about?
For an example, if you take the issue of discipline, there are decisions and resolutions and principles and constitutional processes to be undertaken. We are no longer going to wait and take a long time. That's going to be very visible. This policy conference resolved that we must implement those decisions because they are there. We must implement the kind of policies that relate to that. Because at times we would be saying, well, this comrade, let us see, maybe the comrade is going to change, but they keep on doing, some trying to be smarter, thinking they're smarter by, in a sense, going around this kind of thing. We're going to be very clear, we're going to be very decisive in taking action.
Discipline is one. What else is the ANC going to do differently?
But also the question of looking at how do we renew the organization, for an example. That issue is an issue we needed to, when by the time we get to December, we are clearer. How do we want to look at the structures of the organization so that by the time we take the decisions, we know exactly what to do thereafter. But there will be also programs that would be looked at. For an example, the programs, if we talk about radical change in the economic areas, what are the things that we've got to be doing? Because some of them are very obvious. The ANC conference would not take a different position on the recommendations. The only thing is that they are not now resolutions taken by the national conference, but every ANC branch, every ANC level is satisfied that these would need to be endorsed. So we're going to begin to work on the programs, how then to implement them thereafter.
What is going to be the specific role of you, the top six officials, but also the National Executive Committee and the National Working Committee of the ANC? In other words, what is going to be the role of the ANC leadership in actually bringing about that change? And the reason I'm asking that, because it's also at about the same time that you're going to the elective conference. So a lot of things may happen in the process. How are you going to ensure, as the leadership of the party, that the changes you're talking about will actually happen, but at the same time, knowing that some of you will in fact be competing for positions come Mangaung in December?
Well, I'm not sure about that, about competing of the positions. I know that there is a lot of that said and a lot of exaggerations out there. And that's why when we were coming to this conference, many people out there, as a result of the media, thought that there was going to be a battle for Mangaung. And that's a point I was making even at the closing, that people have not understood the ANC. We have not competed. We have not. I don't think there is evidence. People talk about innuendos and other things. We are dealing with decisions here that have been taken by a policy conference. No leader of the ANC would act against those. All of us are going to be very unanimous.
But then, Mr. President, I mean, on the first day, soon after you made your opening remarks to the NEC speech that you read, no sooner that some of the ANC's leaders, members of the executive, raised issue with people who were singing songs in your name that it wasn't proper. So already it has started. In other words, yes, you may be right that the media is putting a lot of emphasis on the issue, but the reality is that it is happening.
Now, I don't know, I'm not certain whether the media really understands. The fact that the media could say songs about the president of the ANC at a campaign, that really says a lot to whether they know the ANC. Ever since I joined the ANC when President Luthuli was the president. We were singing about President Luthuli, Somlande Luthuli, and there were many other songs. After Luthuli was Tambo. We sang about Tambo all the time. There was no competition. There was no conference coming. After Tambo, it was Madiba. We sang about Madiba, but not just because he was a president. We sang about Madiba long before he was a president. When there was Thabo Mbeki, we sang about Thabo Mbeki. For ANC gatherings to sing about a president who is the face of the organization is not a campaign. This is what people try to bring the issues that are not necessarily the issues.
Granted.
We sing about the leaders who were never president. We sang about Chris when he was still alive, Chris Hani, up to now. So I think people are missing the point when they talk about singing about a face of the ANC, not just the president, even other leaders.
Granted, Mr. President, and I may not be as clued up on ANC matters as you are, certainly, but one would say that given the challenge that you have, the fact that, for example, you have had to say that the no succession and all those issues between now and October. Then only thereafter, once the branches have discussed, can they start talking about names that should occupy leadership positions. In other words, you've had to do things differently, precisely because you are dealing with a completely different scenario right now that's calling for a different way of doing things. So someone would then say, perhaps, you could have said, Animenbo, Mastrabele Nenyingoma, Siyeke le ingozuma. Then in that way, people would have seen it for what it is. In other words, it would have actually helped, in my view, the conference if you had said, don't sing that song, not because this is not done in the ANC, but because we're dealing with a very different and complex set of circumstances here. We don't want unintended consequences.
No, I wouldn't. If comrades sang about the leaders of the ANC, I wouldn't have a problem. I would not, even with that kind of decision being taken. I don't think we should conflate these two. The reason why that decision was taken was because people were campaigning about the names of others. And mark you, it was 3 years before the conference, campaigning and actually saying, we want so and so to occupy that position when that time comes. Talking about positions that are occupied by other comrades today. It's unheard of in the ANC. We don't do so. Not singing, that's a different matter. We stopped that debate because it was not helping the organization. Because other comrades were already identifying their own candidates. It's never done. In fact, once you saw that, you realize that people who were doing so had very little understanding of the ANC, even if they were members of the ANC and its processes. So that's what we stopped. Not sing about the leaders. You can sing about the leader. You can sing about the deputy president, the SG, the chairperson, whatever. That will never be stopped. Once you try to make that equivalent to people who were doing the wrong things, we're campaigning. We don't campaign in the ANC. We give the branches to take decisions and therefore pronounce. Even whether those people stand or not, it is when they've been nominated where then the people who deal with elections come to say we've been nominated, to accept the nomination or not. That's how the ANC must. And then it is only then you know, it will be known whether we are standing or not standing. At the moment, you might find that many names that are being thrown around will actually not necessarily be the names that will be, at that given time, be the names that will be talked about.
Mr. President, we're going to take another quick commercial break. We'll be back right after this.